But I do want to tell all of you that when Eve came back from the Congo in September of 2007 and wrote a piece for Glamour magazine which began with the words, "I have just returned from hell," she electrified the international community. She galvanized in a way that had not been done for a number of years, despite the procession of reports and commentaries. She galvanized a recognition that there was something truly appalling happening in the Congo that had no measure anywhere else on the planet. We talk of all the other terrifying episodes for women around the world. Darfur, Afghanistan, Iraq, other parts of Africa. I'm part of a little NGO in the United States which over the last 3 months has been scrupulously taking affidavits from the women raped by the Mugabe thugs in the period of election turbulence in the middle of 2008. As of this week, we've now gathered between 50 and 60 affidavits which we will use to preserve the evidence for a future international criminal proceeding. And the quality and content of the affidavits is unassailable. But the horror, the stories, the torture, the raping, it is beyond the capacity of the mind to absorb. And as horrific as those elements of Zimbabwe are, they are not comparable to what is happening in the Congo. So I listen to Eve and I think of my own country and I ask myself, what can Canada do? And I feel that she's right. There is a fundamental decency and generosity of spirit in this country, which if it can be pulled together, can make an appreciable international impact. And I think in a very strong way that impact has to be felt through the United Nations. It has to be felt through a restoration of multilateralism, bringing us back to our roots, bringing us again into the mainstream of international credibility. We're dealing with an organization in the UN that has 17,000 troops in the Congo in this component called MONUC, the largest single peacekeeping operation, so-called, in the world. It has 12 United Nations agencies on the ground, united in a consortium, allegedly to deal with protecting the women of the Congo, and neither the troops nor the agencies have made the kind of qualitative difference in the lives of the women which will overcome these unbelievably dreadful stories. In practical terms, this is what strikes me. Number one, Canada, through its establishment at the United Nations and through the House of Commons, should be demanding of the Secretary General of the United Nations, as the first citizen of the world, as the person who provides ostensible global leadership, we should be demanding that he not simply indulge in rhetorical concerns about the Congo and the occasional op-ed to manifest the searing of his soul, but that he manage the response, that he show the leadership which one would expect from the primary international organization on the ground, and that he do it with a constancy and an indefatigability which speaks to that goal. Number two, that one of the things he does first is to call in the heads of all the individual agencies that are on the ground in this consortium of 12 and effectively read the Riot Act to them and ask them for individual accountability. Where are they? What are they doing? The United Nations has extraordinary power on the ground, which is simply not being exercised. And Canada has a particular entry point here. CEDA has given $15.5 million over 4 years to 3 United Nations agencies, UNICEF, UNFPA, and the High Commission for Human Rights, to look into 4 particular areas in the Democratic Republic of the Congo focused on the eastern region, in the Kivus, where the dreadful sexual violence is taking place. Number 1, a medical response. Number 2, psychosocial interventions. Number 3, community reintegration. And number 4, justice and the law to overcome impunity. And we have a right to ask, how is our money being used? Where are the rest of the UN agencies in the consortium of 12, when only 3 show any inclination to be deeply involved? How do you have the most powerful multilateral organization in the world, and you don't have them gathered collectively to intervene on behalf of the women of the Congo when every Security Council resolution provides that kind of mandate? Canada's voice should be heard, and the voice is quiescent and passive. And that is, I think, profoundly wrong. Number 3, I remind you again that it was largely through Canada, through Alan Locke and Lloyd Axworthy, that we had this fascinating concept of the responsibility to protect. And in September of 2005, all of the countries of the world agreed by way of consensus that responsibility to protect would be exercised in instances where governments were unable or unwilling to protect their citizens from gross violations of human rights. Well, what better example of grotesque violations of human rights than the Democratic Republic of the Congo? And as a country that played a role in formulating the responsibility to protect, which has now been elevated to a principle embraced by the entire international community, why aren't we indicating the nature of the intervention? Should it be diplomatic? Should it be economic? Should it be military? Why do we participate in the design of a possible answer to the human predicament and then behave so irresponsibly as to embrace indifference? It doesn't make any sense. And we have the authority and the capacity to make it come to life. Number 4, we should be calling in the ambassador for the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And we should be making a démarche through our ambassador to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, insisting that the government of the Congo begin to exercise its alleged intent of protecting the women, and that we also insist on the development of an agenda for social and economic restoration of both the infrastructure and the political processes. We've rarely used our capacity as a government to insist on the possibilities of the government of the Congo assuming some responsibility for this horrendous decline in human behavior. And then Eve makes reference to, and others make reference to, number 5, resolutions 1325 and 1820, with which resolutions Canada again played a part. These are Security Council resolutions. What in God's name goes on in this world? 1325 was passed on October 1, 2000. And from that day to this, it has never once been implemented. The possibility of women participating at the peacekeeping tables, the possibility of women participating in the discussions which lead to a negotiated peace, it is never honored. Never honored. And the consequence is that we never approximate a settlement which will protect the lives of the women of the Congo, or for that matter, anywhere else. I think it was UNIFEM who pointed out that the women constitute 1.3% of all the signatures that have ever been applied to any peacekeeping agreement or negotiation between the day October the 1st, 2000, and this day in April of 2009. It's a Security Council resolution. Everybody talks about it in such rhapsodic and lyrical terms. It's utter nonsense unless it's given force and meaning. Where is Canada's voice? Why aren't we pressing for it? We're running for the Security Council. Should not one of the conditions of running, should we not be saying to the countries whose votes we covet, we want you to know that we're going to be fiercely determined to implement Resolution 1325, as we will be fiercely determined to honor Resolution 1820, which elevates sexual violence to a breach of international peace and security.